I'm losing my family because they think that I hid the fact from them that my ex now sister's husband is abusive. So, I'm Sarah. I'm 34, and my whole family's basically turning against me right now. It's hard to explain how it all went downhill, but it started with Matt. Matt's my ex, and we were together for almost 2 years. At first, he was perfect. He seemed like the type of guy who was just made to be a good boyfriend. He was always so kind, thoughtful, and I honestly thought I hit the jackpot when I met him. We met at a work event. Nothing fancy, just one of those awkward office parties where you pretend to like the small talk and hope to escape early. But Matt was different. We got to chatting, and next thing I knew, we spent the whole night just talking about everything from our favorite movies to the trips we wanted to take. I swear, it felt like we had this instant connection. And I know that sounds cheesy, but at the time, it was like everything just clicked. Fast forward a couple of months, and I'm totally in love with this guy. He's meeting my family, coming over for Sunday dinners, the whole thing. Everyone liked him. My mom kept saying, "He's such a gentleman, Sarah. Don't let him go." And my dad, who never really cared much about who I dated, actually approved. That meant a lot to me. I've dated a few guys before, but Matt was the first one my family seemed to really like. And then there was Emma, my younger sister. She's 28 now, but back then she was 26 and still living that carefree, single life. We were never super close, but we got along fine. Emma was always the outgoing one, like the life of the party, always meeting new people, always the one everyone wanted to be around. I never thought anything of it when she and Matt got along. I mean, I figured it was a good thing, right? If your family and your boyfriend get along, that's a win. Well, Christmas rolls around and Matt and I are still going strong. We'd been dating for about a year at this point, and I was really hoping he'd propose soon. Yeah, I know, maybe I was jumping ahead, but it felt right. Anyway, we had this big family Christmas party, like we do every year. It's the whole family, my parents, Emma, my brother Kevin, cousins, aunts, uncles, a full house. That night, I was running around, helping my mom with food, setting up tables, all the usual stuff. Matt was being his charming self, helping out, talking with my dad, cracking jokes. Everything seemed perfect. I was so happy. But then something felt off. You know when you just know something's not right? I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was this weird tension in the air. I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was just stressed from the holidays. At one point, I noticed Matt and Emma weren't in the room, but I figured they were just outside or whatever. I didn't think much of it until I went looking for Matt. I wanted to show him something. Probably some dumb Christmas ornament my mom kept since we were kids, something like that. I walked through the house, checking the living room, the kitchen, even the garage where my dad and uncle were drinking beers. Nothing. Finally, I went upstairs, thinking maybe he was getting something from our bags or whatever. That's when I found them. I walked into the guest room, and there they were, Matt and Emma, making out. Like, full on, not even trying to hide it. I just stood there, frozen, like my brain couldn't even process what I was seeing. It didn't make sense. This was the guy who said he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me. This was my sister, my freaking sister. I remember feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. My heart was pounding and I couldn't move. Then Matt saw me. He pushed Emma away and started stammering like, "Sarah, this isn't what it looks like. I mean, come on. How many times have you heard that in movies?" I was just staring at him and then at Emma, who didn't even look ashamed. She just looked annoyed, like I was the one interrupting her. I didn't even say anything. I just turned around and walked out. I didn't know what to do. Do I yell? Do I cry? I couldn't even process it. I just went downstairs, grabbed my coat, and left. I didn't care that it was Christmas. I didn't care about anything. I drove home in this weird daze, replaying the scene over and over in my head. How could they do this to me? Matt tried to call me that night. He texted me too. "I'm sorry." It didn't mean anything, all the usual BS, but I couldn't even bring myself to respond. My own sister. How could Emma do this? How long had it been going on? Were there other times I didn't know about? My mind was spinning, trying to piece it all together. The next morning, I got a call from my mom. She said she wanted to talk. I figured she knew what happened and was calling to apologize or something, but when I answered, she sounded normal, like nothing was wrong. I didn't say anything about what happened, just waited for her to bring it up. Finally, she said, "Sarah, I think you overreacted last night." Overreacted. She went on about how I should move on and not let this ruin the family. My dad chimed in too, saying that it's not worth holding a grudge and that people make mistakes. I was speechless. They were acting like it was some minor thing, like Matt had just spilled a drink on the carpet or something. My sister betrayed me, and they were brushing it off. That was the moment I realized I was on my own. My family wasn't going to back me up on this. Matt and Emma, they were still together. A couple of months later, I found out Emma was pregnant. And guess what? My parents threw her a huge baby shower. They forgave her just like that. Meanwhile, I was still trying to pick up the pieces of my life. I didn't want to be around any of them after that. I started keeping my distance. I still showed up at family events because honestly, I didn't want to lose my parents, but it was always awkward. Matt and Emma would be there, and I'd just sit quietly in the corner, avoiding them. My mom kept pushing me to forgive them, saying, family comes first. But how do you forgive something like that? And now, here I am, years later, and they're blaming me for not warning Emma that Matt's abusive. How was I supposed to know? He never laid a hand on me. But apparently, that's my fault too. My family's falling apart, and I'm the one getting blamed. I don't know how it got to this point. All right, so after everything with Emma and Matt, I thought things couldn't get worse. Like, I've already lost my sister to this guy who basically wrecked my life, and I figured my family would at least have my back. But nope, turns out that's not how it works in my family. Now they're blaming me for everything that's happening to Emma. I seriously can't wrap my head around it. It started a couple days after that whole scene with my mom and Emma. I was still trying to make sense of it all when my phone rings, and it's my dad. I haven't spoken to him since the Christmas disaster. Honestly, I thought maybe he was calling to check in like, hey, how are you doing with all this? But no. The first thing he says is, Sarah, we need to talk. You know that sinking feeling you get when you just know it's not going to be a good conversation? Yeah, that's exactly what hit me. I was like, okay, what's up? He doesn't even beat around the bush. He goes, your mom and I are really upset with how you handled this thing with Emma. You're making things worse. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm making things worse? So I ask him, how am I making anything worse? I didn't even know about the abuse. And he just sighs like I'm the one who's not getting it. He goes, Sarah, you should have seen the signs. You were with Matt for 2 years. You must have known something. I just sat there stunned. I didn't know what to say. How could they think I knew Matt was abusive? It's not like he had violent tattooed on his forehead. But my dad wasn't done. He kept going, saying that Emma's been suffering for years now, and that if I had warned her about Matt's true nature, maybe none of this would have happened. I tried to explain again that I had no idea Matt was like this. I told him that the Matt I knew was completely different, that he never once showed any signs of being violent. But it's like my words were going in one ear and out the other. He wasn't listening. He just kept saying things like, you should have known. You were too close to him not to notice. At this point, I was getting frustrated. I was trying to stay calm, but it felt like I was being blamed for something that was completely out of my control. I told my dad, look, I didn't know, and I'm sorry that Emma's going through this, but this isn't my fault. But he wouldn't let it go. He started talking about how Emma's been crying every day, how she feels like I betrayed her, how she thinks I've been hiding things from her. I couldn't help it. I snapped. I was like, betrayed her? Are you serious right now? She betrayed me. She's the one who hooked up with my fiancé behind my back, and now I'm the bad guy? I was shaking at this point, my voice cracking. I couldn't believe I was having to defend myself in this situation. My dad just went quiet for a second. I thought maybe, finally, I had gotten through to him. But then he said the worst thing he could have said. He goes, Sarah, you need to stop making this about you. This isn't about what happened years ago. This is about Emma's safety, and you need to put your issues aside and help us figure out how to deal with Matt. I was speechless. I couldn't even respond. How was this not about me? Emma and Matt had destroyed my relationship, my trust in them, and now they were acting like I was the one causing all the problems. I just told my dad I had to go and hung up. I couldn't deal with it anymore. But of course, it didn't end there. The next day, I got a text from Emma. It was short, just a couple of lines, but it hit me hard. She wrote, you lied to me. You always knew Matt wasn't right, and you kept it from me. You probably laughed at me behind my back thinking I'd fall for the same lies you did. And then she blocked me. I didn't even get a chance to respond. I felt like my heart was being ripped out. How could she think that? I would never do something like that to her. Sure, we weren't best friends or anything, but she was still my sister. I would have warned her if I had any clue that Matt was abusive, but she wasn't listening. None of them were. And then my mom called. She had clearly spoken to Emma and Dad because she jumped right into it, saying, Sarah, we've been talking and we all feel like you need to make things right with Emma. I was like, what does that even mean? How am I supposed to make things right when she won't even listen to me? But my mom didn't see it that way. She said I needed to apologize to Emma for hiding the truth, and that maybe if I showed her I was sorry, she'd come around. I couldn't believe it. Apologize? For something I didn't even do? It was like they were rewriting history, making me the villain in this whole thing. I told my mom, I'm not apologizing for something that isn't my fault. I didn't know Matt was like this, and I don't appreciate being blamed for it. But she wasn't having it. She said, well, maybe if you didn't talk about how perfect Matt was all the time, Emma wouldn't have fallen for him so easily. That's when I lost it. I said, are you kidding me right now? You're saying this is my fault because I thought my boyfriend was a decent person? That's insane. My mom tried to calm me down, saying she didn't mean it like that, but the damage was done. I was done. I hung up and sat there in silence for a long time. My mind was racing. How did it come to this? How did I go from being the one who was betrayed to the one being blamed for everything? It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense anymore. The next day, my brother Kevin came over. He's the only one in the family who's still somewhat on my side. He said, I've been talking to Mom and Dad and they're not going to drop this. They really believe you could have stopped this whole thing from happening. I just shook my head, feeling defeated. What am I supposed to do? I asked him. He sighed and said, honestly, Sarah, I don't know. But you're not going to change their minds. And that's when it hit me. I'm not going to win this. No matter what I say or do, my family's made up their minds. They've decided I'm the villain in this story, and nothing I say is going to change that. Update 1. So after all the stuff with my family blaming me, I decided I needed to know more. Like, how did this Matt that I thought I knew turn into such a monster with Emma? I was trying to understand how someone who was always so good to me could be this abusive guy she's talking about now. I mean, I was with him for almost 2 years, and there were zero signs of anything like that. It just didn't add up. I started doing some digging. Not like full-on stalking, but I wanted to get a better idea of what was really going on between them. I talked to Kevin, my brother, since he's the only one in the family who hasn't completely turned against me. He's pretty neutral, but he's been around Emma and Matt more than I have, so I figured maybe he'd seen something I missed. Kevin didn't know a whole lot, but he had heard some stuff. Apparently, the abuse started pretty early in their relationship, like not even a year in. Emma got pregnant right away, and that's when Matt started showing his true colors. She told Kevin that Matt wasn't happy about the pregnancy. He wanted her to get an abortion, but Emma refused. That's when things went downhill fast. According to Kevin, that's when Matt became controlling. He didn't want Emma going anywhere without him, and he'd blow up over the smallest things. At first, it was just verbal, yelling, calling her names, stuff like that. But then it escalated. Kevin didn't know all the details, but Emma had told him that Matt started getting physical not long after their first kid was born. He'd shove her, grab her, and sometimes worse. Hearing all this made me sick. I mean, I've never liked Matt after what he did to me, but I never thought he'd be capable of that kind of violence. And it made me feel guilty too, because I introduced him to Emma in the first place. Like, if I'd never brought him into our lives, maybe none of this would have happened. But then again, how was I supposed to know? I wanted to get more info, so I reached out to a couple of mutual friends, people who knew Matt back when we were together. I wasn't super close with them anymore, but they might have seen things I didn't. One of them, Liz, told me something that completely threw me off. She said that Matt had always had a bit of a temper, even when we were dating. She said he'd vent to her sometimes about how I pushed his buttons and how he had to work hard to keep his cool. That was news to me. I had no idea he felt that way. To me, everything seemed fine. We had our arguments, like any couple, but nothing major. And he never once showed any sign of being violent or angry in a dangerous way. But according to Liz, there were a few times when Matt had confided in her that he felt trapped by me, like I was holding him back from something. She never thought much of it, but now looking back, she thought maybe that was a sign. After hearing that, I couldn't help but wonder how many red flags I missed. Did I just not see it? Was I too blinded by the whole perfect boyfriend thing to notice that he was actually hiding who he really was? It was starting to mess with my head. Then, Kevin dropped another bomb on me. He told me that Emma had found a secret Instagram account Matt had. At first I thought it was just him following some random girls or something. Gross, but whatever, right? But then Kevin said that Matt was following me on that account. I was like, wait, what? Why would he do that? Apparently, Matt was following a bunch of women, including me, and Emma had freaked out when she saw it. She thought it meant he was still obsessed with me or something, like he was secretly trying to keep tabs on me even after everything that happened. That's when her paranoia really kicked in. She started accusing him of still having feelings for me, and that led to more fights between them. It's twisted. The guy cheats on me with my sister, then turns around and makes Emma think he's still interested in me? What kind of messed up game is he playing? I can't even wrap my head around it. Kevin told me that Matt used to say things to Emma like, "Sarah was always a good girl, not like you." He'd make these little comparisons between us, like I was somehow better than her, and it drove Emma nuts. No wonder she's been acting so crazy towards me lately. She's probably convinced I'm trying to get back at her by messing with her husband, which couldn't be further from the truth. I want nothing to do with Matt, but he's making her think otherwise. The more I learned, the more it became clear that Matt was playing both of us. He'd treated me like a queen when we were together, but with Emma, he's this controlling, abusive monster. And now he's manipulating her into thinking I'm still in the picture, like I'm some kind of threat to their messed up relationship. It's beyond screwed up. I started thinking back to little things during our relationship, things that didn't seem like a big deal at the time, but now made me wonder. Like, there were a couple of times when Matt would get irritated over small things, but he'd brush it off like it was no big deal. I remember one time we were arguing about something stupid, and he clenched his fist so hard his knuckles turned white. I didn't think much of it back then, but now, maybe that was a sign. Maybe he was just really good at hiding his true self when he was with me. But why didn't he ever show that side to me? Why was it just Emma? Was it because I didn't get pregnant? Because I wasn't as dependent on him as Emma was? It's so confusing, trying to figure out how someone can be one way with one person and completely different with someone else. At this point, I felt like I was spiraling. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Part of me still couldn't reconcile the Matt I knew with the Matt that Emma was living with now. But the evidence was there. Emma had the bruises, the stories, and now the secret Instagram account. It was clear that Matt wasn't who I thought he was. And the worst part? There was nothing I could do. Emma won't talk to me. My parents are still blaming me. And I'm stuck in this position where I'm supposed to feel guilty for something I didn't even know about. I wanted to help Emma. But how can you help someone who thinks you're the enemy? How can you get through to someone who's convinced that you're the problem when the real problem is standing right in front of them? It's heartbreaking. I'm scared for Emma, but I don't know if she'll ever get out of this. She's trapped, and there's nothing I can do to save her. And that's the worst feeling in the world. Update 2. After everything I'd learned about Matt and the way he'd been treating Emma, I was ready to step back, cut my losses, and just try to focus on my own life. But of course, that wasn't going to happen. Not with my family so dead set on dragging me back into their mess. It's like no matter what I do, I'm always stuck in the middle, even when I'm trying my best to stay out of it. It started with a phone call from my mom. Now, you'd think after all the blame they've been throwing my way, I'd have stopped answering, but no. I guess I was still holding on to this tiny shred of hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd come to their senses and realize I wasn't the bad guy in this situation. Spoiler alert, they didn't. So my mom calls, and right away I can tell something's off. Her voice is shaky, like she's been crying or maybe she's about to start. She goes, "Sarah, we need to talk about Emma." And I'm like, "Mom, we've already been over this. I didn't know about Matt. I've told you everything I can." But then she says something that catches me off guard. Emma's not doing well. She's talking about leaving Matt. Now, under any other circumstances, this would be good news, right? Like, if Emma was finally seeing Matt for what he really is, that's the best thing that could happen. But the way my mom said it, it didn't sound like good news at all. There was something in her voice that made me feel like this was about to get even messier. So I ask her, "Why is that a bad thing? If she's thinking about leaving him, that's what you wanted, right?" But my mom sighs and says, "She thinks she has nowhere to go, Sarah. She doesn't want to move back in with us, and she's too embarrassed to ask anyone for help." I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. I knew where this was going. "She's asking if she can stay with you for a while." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. The idea of Emma, after everything she's said and done, coming to stay with me, it was so absurd I didn't even know how to respond. I said, "Are you serious right now? She hates me, Mom. She thinks I'm part of the problem. Why would she want to stay with me?" My mom tried to explain, saying Emma's been going through a lot, that she's scared and confused, and that she didn't know who else to turn to. But I wasn't buying it. If Emma wanted help, why not go to our parents? Or Kevin? Why me, of all people? The one person she's been blaming for all her problems? So I asked her straight up, "Why can't she stay with you and Dad?" And that's when my mom dropped the real reason. She said, "Your father doesn't want her back in the house." I couldn't believe it. My parents had been bending over backward to defend Emma, making excuses for her, blaming me for everything. And now, when she actually needs them, they're turning her away? It didn't make any sense. Apparently, my dad didn't want to deal with the drama, that would come with Emma moving back home. He thought it would be too disruptive, too stressful for him and my mom. And of course, they figured the easiest solution was to dump the problem on me. I was angry. Not just at my parents for trying to pawn Emma off on me, but at the whole situation. How did it get to this point? How did I go from being the victim in all of this to the person everyone expected to fix things? I told my mom, look, I feel for Emma, I really do. But I can't have her staying with me. We haven't spoken in months. She blocked me, she accused me of all this horrible stuff, and now she wants me to be her safety net? That's not fair. My mom tried to guilt trip me, saying, you're her sister, Sarah. Family helps each other. You can't just leave her out in the cold. But I wasn't falling for it this time. I said, you and Dad are her parents. If anyone should be helping her, it's you. The conversation ended with my mom sounding disappointed, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their drama. If Emma needed help, she could go to literally anyone else. A few days went by, and I thought maybe they'd finally dropped it. Maybe Emma had figured something out on her own. But then Kevin showed up at my place. I hadn't seen him in a while, so I figured he was just stopping by to check in. But the look on his face told me something was up. Sarah, he said, you're not going to like this, but Emma's moving in with Mom and Dad. I blinked at him, confused. I thought Dad didn't want her there. Kevin shrugged. Yeah, well, he changed his mind. Mom convinced him. But there's a catch. Of course there was. They want you to come over and talk to her. Try to, smooth things over. I stared at him like, are you serious right now? Smooth things over? Kevin, she hates me. She thinks I'm the reason her life's falling apart. Kevin held up his hands. I know. But Mom and Dad are worried. They think maybe if you two talk, she'll come around. Maybe she'll finally see that Matt's the problem, not you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything Emma's put me through, after all the accusations and the blame, they wanted me to sit down and have a heart-to-heart with her? Like that was somehow going to fix things? I shook my head. I'm not doing it, Kevin. I can't. She's made it clear that she wants nothing to do with me. Kevin sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, I get it. But you know how stubborn Mom and Dad are. They're not going to drop this until you at least try. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them all to leave me the hell alone and figure out their own problems. But Kevin was right. My parents weren't going to stop pushing until I gave in. So against my better judgment, I agreed to go over there and talk to Emma. The next day, I found myself standing on my parents' front porch, feeling like I was about to walk into a lion's den. I hadn't seen Emma since that day she blocked me, and I had no idea how this was going to go. When I walked inside, my mom gave me this hopeful smile, like she actually believed this was going to fix everything. Emma was sitting in the living room, looking tired and worn down. She didn't even acknowledge me when I walked in. I sat down across from her, and for a long time, neither of us said anything. The silence was heavy, like we both knew this wasn't going to end well. Finally, I broke the silence. Emma, I know things have been rough between us, but I want you to know that I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't know about Matt. I would have warned you if I did. She didn't look at me. She just stared at the floor, her jaw clenched. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I'm not the enemy here, Emma. I care about you. I don't want to see you hurt. Finally, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with anger. You don't get it, Sarah. You never have. You think just because you were his perfect little girlfriend that he wouldn't turn on you too? You have no idea what it's been like. And just like that, I knew this conversation was over before it even started. Update 3. So after that whole awkward attempt to smooth things over with Emma, I knew it was time to make a real decision. I'd been dragged into this family mess for long enough, and it was clear that no matter what I did, nothing was ever going to be enough. I left my parents' house that day feeling drained, like I'd been running in circles and no one was even trying to listen. Emma wasn't going to forgive me, and my parents? They were still caught up in this fantasy that I could somehow fix everything between us. It was late when I got home, and I just sat on my couch, staring at my phone. There were no messages, no missed calls, nothing. For the first time in a while, my phone wasn't blowing up with drama from my family. It was weird. I should have felt relieved, but instead, I just felt empty. Like, how did it get to this point? How did my own family turn on me so fast? I guess I'd been holding on to some hope that things could go back to how they were before Matt came into the picture. But by now, I realized that was never going to happen. I knew I had to make a choice. Either keep letting them pull me back into their mess, or cut my losses and move on. And honestly, moving on was starting to feel like the only option that made any sense. But of course, it wasn't going to be that easy. A few days later, my mom calls me again. This time, she sounds desperate. She tells me that Emma and Matt had another huge fight, and Emma is seriously considering leaving him for good. Apparently, she'd packed some bags and told my parents she was done. But my mom didn't seem relieved or happy about it. Instead, she was more concerned with how Emma was handling things. She was worried Emma might go back to Matt if she didn't have enough support from the family. And once again, she dragged me right back into it. I really think you should try talking to her again, Sarah, my mom said. She listens to you more than anyone else, even if she doesn't show it. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was just so ridiculous. Emma listens to me? That's a joke. Every time I've tried to help, it's blown up in my face. I told my mom, she doesn't listen to me. She blames me. There's a difference. My mom kept pushing, though, saying that maybe if I just tried one more time, Emma would realize I wasn't the bad guy and that I was only trying to help. But I wasn't falling for it. I'd already done my part. I'd tried talking to Emma, tried explaining my side, and all it got me was more anger and blame. I wasn't about to put myself through that again. So I told my mom no. I said, look, I'm done with this. I've tried and it's not working. I can't keep putting myself out there just to get hurt again. Emma needs to figure this out on her own, and I can't be the one to fix it for her. My mom went silent for a minute, like she couldn't believe what I was saying. Then she started crying, telling me how much it hurt to see our family falling apart like this. She said she felt like she was losing both of her daughters at the same time and didn't know what to do. It was hard to listen to, and a part of me wanted to cave in and say I'd give it one more shot, just to make her stop crying. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. It would just drag things out longer. I'm sorry, Mom, I said, but I can't keep doing this. It's not healthy for me, and it's not helping Emma. She has to make her own choices. After I hung up, I felt this weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was putting myself first. And it felt good. I wasn't responsible for Emma's choices, and I wasn't going to let my family keep blaming me for things I couldn't control. It was time for me to move on and live my life without all this constant drama. But of course, it wasn't over yet. A week later, Kevin called. He's always been the more reasonable one in the family, so when I saw his name pop up on my phone, I figured it'd be a normal conversation. But when I picked up, he sounded stressed. Sarah, I don't know how to tell you this, but Emma's back with Matt. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. After everything she'd been through, after all the fights and all the tears, she was still going back to him. I couldn't believe it. Are you serious? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Kevin sighed. Yeah, she went back yesterday. Mom and Dad are freaking out, but they don't want to push her too hard in case she just cuts them off completely. Of course, that was always the game with Emma. Tiptoe around her, don't say anything that might upset her, because God forbid she gets mad and shuts everyone out. It's like they were all walking on eggshells, just waiting for the next disaster. Kevin, I can't deal with this anymore, I said, cutting him off before he could say anything else. I've done everything I can. I've tried talking to her, I've tried being there for her, and it's not working. She's made her choice, and I'm not getting dragged into it again. Kevin didn't argue. I think he knew I was right, but he still sounded defeated. Yeah, I get it, he said. I just wish things didn't turn out like this. Me too. After that, I made my final decision. I told my parents I was going low contact for a while. I needed space from all of it, Emma, Matt, the constant drama. I wasn't cutting them off completely, but I wasn't going to let them pull me back into the middle of their mess anymore. I told them I'd still be there if they really needed me, but I wasn't going to be their go-to person for fixing Emma's problems. It wasn't easy. Part of me still felt guilty, like I was abandoning my family when they needed me. But at the same time, I knew I had to do it. I couldn't keep letting them drag me down with them. I had to look out for myself, too. So here I am now, finally taking a step back. I'm focusing on my own life, my own happiness, and letting go of all the guilt that's been weighing me down. I don't know what's going to happen with Emma and Matt, but I do know one thing. It's not my responsibility to fix it anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can finally breathe. Family ghosted me after a horrible injury. After recovering, the first they asked was to babysit. So I'm 23F, and up until recently, I was super close with my family. Like, I'm talking about spending almost all my free time with them. I have two sisters, Leah, 30F, and Sophie, 28F, and a brother, Adam, 35M. They all have kids, 4 total between the 3 of them, and for the longest time, I was basically their favorite aunt/babysitter. I loved their kids, though. Don't get me wrong, I genuinely did. And honestly, I didn't really mind helping out. I didn't have a social life or anything. So when my siblings needed me to take care of the kids, I was all in. It felt like I had a purpose, you know? Looking back now, I think I ignored the fact that I was kind of their go-to person for everything when it came to their kids. It's like every weekend I was watching them or spending money I didn't really have to take them out somewhere fun. My siblings, by the way, all have way more money than I do. Like, they're all pretty well off, especially Adam. He's got this fancy job and all that, but somehow I was the one always footing the bill for the kids' toys, snacks, trips to the movies, you name it. At the time, it didn't bother me. I thought I was just being a good aunt. But now that I think about it, was I being a good aunt? Or was I just letting myself get taken advantage of? Anyway, things were going fine for years. I was babysitting all the time, going to their school events, taking them out on weekends so my siblings could have their own time off. I didn't have much else going on, to be honest, so it filled that gap in my life. I didn't have a big friend group, wasn't dating anyone seriously, so the kids were kind of my world. But then, everything changed about a year ago. I had this freak accident. I tripped over something stupid in my apartment. I think it was a laundry basket or something. And I ended up really hurting myself. Like, bad. I couldn't walk, and both my hands were messed up. Doctors said I was looking at 6 months, maybe more, of physical therapy and recovery. I went from being this super active, independent person to someone who couldn't even feed themselves. The first couple of weeks after the accident, I was still kind of in shock. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. But I figured, okay, my family is going to help me out, right? I mean, I was always there for them, always stepping up when they needed me. Now it was my turn to lean on them a bit. Boy, was I wrong. I was in the hospital for a couple of days after the accident, and I remember Leah came to visit me once. She stayed for like 20 minutes, and that was it. Adam? He texted me like, "Hey, heard you fell. Sucks, get well soon." Sophie didn't even show up at all, just sent a group text saying she was too busy with work but hoped I was okay. That's when the first red flag started waving in my brain, but I tried to brush it off, thinking they were probably just stressed or busy or something. I mean, they've got kids, jobs, lives. I didn't want to be that person who expected too much from them, right? Then I got sent home, and let me tell you, I've never felt so alone in my life. You ever try living by yourself when you can't even walk to the bathroom? Yeah, it's not fun. I couldn't cook, I couldn't clean, hell, I couldn't even brush my own hair. I had to cut most of it off because I just couldn't manage it anymore. I lost 30 pounds in those first few months because I couldn't even make myself food. The fridge was empty. I was living off crackers and protein shakes, and I was too embarrassed to ask anyone for help. And that's when I realized no one in my family was offering to help either. Before my injury, my phone would be blowing up with texts from my siblings asking if I could babysit, pick the kids up from school, or do something for them. After the accident, radio silence. Not one call to see how I was doing. Not one offer to come over and bring me groceries or just check in. It was like I didn't exist anymore. I had to rely on my next-door neighbor, Nancy, who I barely even knew, to pick up some food for me a couple of times. This woman who didn't know me from Adam was showing more kindness than my own family. It was around the 3rd month of being stuck in my apartment, unable to do much of anything, that it really hit me. They only cared about me when I was useful. When I could watch their kids or do favors for them, I was the best sister, the best aunt. But now that I needed help, crickets. That realization messed me up more than the accident did, honestly. I'd always thought we were a close family, but the second I couldn't be their free babysitter anymore, they didn't even bother checking in. I started to feel more and more angry as time went on. I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt at first, like maybe they were just busy or stressed or something, but after months of nothing, it was pretty clear where I stood with them. There were days where I just sat in bed, staring at my phone, hoping one of them would call, maybe just to ask if I needed anything or to see if I was okay, but they never did. And it wasn't just the physical pain that hurt. It was the emotional pain of realizing that I wasn't as important to them as I thought I was. All those years of me going above and beyond for their kids, spending my weekends and money, thinking I was building this strong bond with my family, it all just felt like a lie. By the time I started recovering and was able to walk again, I was mad, really mad. I started thinking back to all the times they'd called me up, asking me to watch the kids so they could go on a date night or take a break, and I realized they never offered me that same kind of support. Not once. It was like they just saw me as their built-in babysitter, and the second I couldn't fill that role anymore, I was useless to them. So, after everything that happened with my accident, you'd think my family would have realized how much they'd messed up, right? Like maybe they'd notice how distant I was being and at least try to make things better. But no, nothing like that. They were still acting like everything was totally normal, like I hadn't just gone through one of the hardest times of my life without them. After I started to get back on my feet, physically at least, I was still dealing with a lot mentally. I had all this anger just boiling up inside me. I didn't know how to bring it up without starting a huge fight, so I kind of just waited to see what would happen. But one thing I knew for sure, I wasn't going back to being their personal babysitter. That part of my life was over. Then one day, I get this call from Sophie, the middle sister. She's all casual, like, "Hey, the kids really miss you. Do you think you could take them for the weekend?" I swear I almost threw my phone across the room. After everything, the first time I hear from her is because she needs me to watch her kids? Not even a, "How are you feeling?" or, "We haven't seen you in a while, are you okay?" Just straight to asking for a favor. Like, "Are you serious right now?" So I told her flat out no. I'm not babysitting anymore, at least not for a while. I figured that was the easiest way to start setting some boundaries, you know? I didn't want to dive into the whole "I'm mad because you abandoned me" conversation just yet, but I needed to make it clear things had changed. Sophie didn't take it well. She acted all confused, like she couldn't understand why I was saying no. She even tried to guilt trip me by saying how much the kids missed me and how hard things had been for her lately. Now, normally that would have worked. I used to be a total pushover when it came to them, especially the kids. But not this time. I stood my ground and told her that I needed to focus on myself for a while. She got all huffy and was like, "Well, I just didn't realize you were so busy now." Busy? I'd been recovering from a life-changing injury for months, completely alone, and now I'm too busy for her? That phone call pretty much confirmed everything I'd been feeling. They didn't care about me unless I was useful to them. After that, I decided I needed to have a real conversation with all of them. Like, sit them down and just lay it all out. I wasn't going to keep pretending like things were okay when I was still hurting, both physically and emotionally. So I texted Leah, Sophie, and Adam, asking if we could all meet up for lunch at this cafe we used to go to. I thought it'd be a good neutral spot to talk things out. When the day finally came, I was nervous as hell. I didn't know how they were going to react, but I knew I couldn't just keep all of this bottled up anymore. So we all sat down, and at first, it was just small talk. They were laughing, catching up, acting like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, I was sitting there, trying not to explode. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, and I just said, "We need to talk." That's when things got awkward real fast. I told them how hurt I was that none of them had been there for me during my injury, how they completely disappeared when I needed them most. I didn't hold back. I told them how lonely and abandoned I felt, and how it made me realize they only seemed to care about me when I was useful to them. I was shaking while I said all of this, but it felt good to finally get it out. Leah was the first one to speak, and her response made me want to scream. She said, "Well, you never asked for help. We just assumed you were fine." I was stunned. Like, did they really need me to beg for help? I couldn't walk. I couldn't even cook for myself, and they knew that. It wasn't a secret. I said, "Why would I have to ask? You saw me in the hospital. You knew I couldn't even get out of bed." Then Adam chimed in, all defensive. He said, "We all have our own lives, you know. It's not like we were just sitting around doing nothing." And that's when I lost it. I told them I had spent years putting their lives and their kids ahead of my own. I gave up my weekends, my money, my energy to be there for them, and the one time I needed something in return, they couldn't even bother to call. I told them I wasn't going to be their free babysitter anymore, and that from now on, I was setting boundaries. Leah looked pissed. She was like, "So you're just going to cut us off? You're going to punish the kids because we didn't check in enough?" That's when the guilt tripping really started. They kept bringing up the kids, saying how much they missed me, and how they didn't understand why I wasn't around anymore. But I wasn't going to let them guilt me into going back to the way things were. I told them straight up, "This isn't about the kids. This is about you guys treating me like I don't matter unless I'm doing something for you." And that's when Sophie finally spoke up. She tried to play the peacekeeper, saying, "We're sorry if we made you feel that way, but you didn't tell us how bad things were." I couldn't believe it. They were still making it sound like this was somehow my fault for not spelling it out for them. I just sat there shaking my head. I shouldn't have to beg my own family to care about me. At that point, I realized this conversation wasn't going anywhere. They weren't going to see things from my perspective, and they definitely weren't going to apologize or admit they were wrong. So I got up and left. As I walked out of that cafe, I felt this weird mix of anger and relief. I was pissed that they still didn't get it, but I was also relieved that I'd finally said everything I'd been holding in. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was putting myself first. And honestly, it felt good. After that conversation at the cafe, things between me and my siblings just went downhill. I mean, it was already bad, but now it was like we were all on totally different planets. No one was willing to see my side of things, and I sure as hell wasn't about to back down. For the first time in my life, I was standing up for myself, and I wasn't going to let them guilt trip me into going back to being their personal babysitter. A week or two passed after that whole mess, and I didn't hear a word from any of them. No calls, no texts, nothing. It was kind of expected, but still, it stung a bit. You'd think after I poured my heart out, they'd at least check in to see how I was doing, but nope, silence. And honestly, that silence spoke louder than anything else they could have said. But then, out of nowhere, Adam called me. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to pick up, but curiosity got the best of me, so I answered. He didn't waste any time with small talk or anything. He jumped right into it like, "So you're really done babysitting for us? Is that it?" I could already tell this wasn't going to be a nice conversation. I said, "Yeah, Adam, I'm done. I told you guys that already." He just sighed and then said something that completely floored me. "Leah and Sophie are thinking about cutting you off from seeing the kids." Now, I know my siblings can be selfish, but I didn't think they'd actually go that far. I was shocked. I asked him, "Are you serious? They're really going to use the kids against me because I won't babysit anymore?" Adam, in his usual blunt way, said, "Well, they feel like if you're not going to help out, then why should you get to hang out with the kids? It's a two-way street." I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so now I had to babysit just to be allowed to see my nieces and nephews? I was angry, like really angry. But I didn't want to let Adam know that. I kept it cool and said, "Look, I love those kids, but I'm not going to let you guys use them as pawns to get me to do what you want. If Leah and Sophie want to keep me from seeing them, that's on them." Adam didn't seem to care much either way. He just kind of shrugged it off and changed the subject. He started talking about his new job, how he was traveling more, and how tough it was balancing work and family. It was like he didn't even realize how messed up the whole situation was. I kept the conversation short, and when we hung up, I felt this weird mix of emotions. Part of me was heartbroken, thinking about not seeing the kids anymore, but another part of me was just done. Like, I couldn't keep doing this with them. The guilt, the manipulation, it was all too much. And if they were really going to punish me by keeping the kids away, then fine. I wasn't going to play their game. A couple more weeks went by, and then I got another call, this time from Sophie. She sounded super sweet, which was already a red flag because she's only nice like that when she wants something. She goes, "Hey, so I've been thinking, and the kids have been asking about you. They really miss you. I was wondering if you could maybe take them for a day next week. Just a day, nothing big. I promise I'll pick them up early." I almost laughed. She was doing exactly what Adam had warned me about, trying to get me back into babysitting by dangling the kids in front of me, but I wasn't falling for it. I told her, "I miss them too, but I'm not babysitting, Sophie. I've told you this." Her tone changed immediately. She went from sweet to pissed in about 2 seconds flat. "I don't understand why you're being so selfish. You used to love spending time with them, and now what? You're just too good for us? Too good for the family?" That hit a nerve, but I kept calm. It's not about being too good for anyone, it's about respect. I've given up so much for you guys, and when I needed help, no one was there. I'm not going back to being the person you call when you need something. Sophie wasn't having it. "Fine, do whatever you want, but don't come crying to us when the kids don't even remember who you are." And then she hung up. That call hit me harder than I expected. I sat there for a while just thinking about what she said. Was she right? Were the kids going to forget me? I had spent so much time with them, been there for every little milestone, every birthday, every scraped knee. It felt like I was losing them, and it hurt. But at the same time, I knew I couldn't go back to how things were. I tried to distract myself after that. I threw myself into work, tried to reconnect with some old friends, even started going out more. It felt weird at first, having time to actually focus on myself. For years, my whole life revolved around my family and their kids. And now that I wasn't involved anymore, I didn't really know what to do with myself. But slowly, I started to figure it out. Then, a few weeks later, I got the call that really broke me. It was Leah, and she sounded panicked. She said that her youngest, Emma, had been in an accident. Apparently, she'd fallen off her bike and broken her arm. Leah was rushing her to the hospital and needed me to watch her other two kids while they dealt with everything. My heart sank. I loved those kids, and the thought of Emma being hurt made me feel sick. But at the same time, I knew what this was. They only called me when they needed something. When they were in a bind, I was suddenly important again. I didn't know what to do. I felt guilty for even thinking about saying no, but I also didn't want to fall back into the same trap. So I took a deep breath and told Leah, "I'm sorry Emma's hurt, but I can't help right now. I hope she's okay." There was a long pause on the other end. Then Leah said in this cold, distant voice, "I can't believe you. After everything, you're really going to do this? I thought you cared about this family." And with that, She hung up. After that call with Leah, I honestly felt like the worst person in the world. I just kept thinking, what if Emma's really hurt and I'm sitting here refusing to help? But then, I had to remind myself, this wasn't my fault. This was a pattern. They only called me when they needed something. If it wasn't for the accident, would Leah have even reached out? I seriously doubted it. Still, the guilt was eating me up, so I texted Leah later that night. I just sent something simple like, I hope Emma's okay. Let me know if you need anything. But surprise, surprise, no response. It was like they only wanted me around when it was convenient, and the second I set a boundary, I was dead to them. A few days went by, and I started hearing bits and pieces from other family members about how my siblings were really upset with me. Apparently, they were telling everyone that I had abandoned the family and that I didn't care about them anymore. It was wild. I couldn't believe they were twisting things like that. I wasn't the one who abandoned anyone. They did that to me when I was at my lowest. It all came to a head when my dad called me. Now, my dad isn't really involved in all the day-to-day drama. He's more of a let's keep the peace kind of guy. He calls me up and says, "We need to talk, kiddo." The minute he said that, I knew I was in for a lecture. We met up at his house, and as soon as I walked in, I could feel the tension. My dad was sitting at the kitchen table, and I could tell he was already stressed. He didn't even offer me coffee or anything, just got straight to it. He goes, "I've been hearing from your siblings, and they're really hurt by the way you've been acting." I wanted to roll my eyes so bad, but I kept it together. "Dad, I don't know what they've been telling you, but I haven't abandoned anyone. I've just stopped babysitting. That's it." He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't really on my side. I get that you've been through a tough time, but family's family. You know how it is. Sometimes we have to do things we don't want to for the sake of the people we love. I couldn't believe it. My own dad was basically telling me to suck it up and go back to being their unpaid babysitter, all for the sake of family. I tried to explain how hurt I was, how they hadn't been there for me during my recovery, but it was like talking to a brick wall. He just kept saying things like, "They didn't mean to hurt you," and "everyone's busy with their own lives." By the end of that conversation, I was so frustrated I could barely see straight. My dad just didn't get it. He wasn't around enough to see how much I was bending over backward for my siblings, and he sure as hell didn't understand how abandoned I felt when they all ghosted me after my accident. He ended the talk with some classic, "Just try to work it out, kiddo. They love you, they really do." But love isn't treating someone like they only matter when it's convenient. After that, I stopped talking to pretty much all of them. It felt like the only way I could protect myself was by creating distance. I couldn't handle being around people who didn't respect me enough to treat me like an actual human being with my own needs and boundaries. So I blocked Leah and Sophie on my phone and deleted our group chat. Adam, I left unblocked because, honestly, he wasn't the worst of the three, but I wasn't exactly reaching out to him either. Then came the hardest part. The kids. I didn't want to cut them off completely. They had no idea what was going on, and it wasn't fair to them. So I reached out to one of my nieces, Natalie, who's 12 and old enough to have her own phone. I sent her a message, just asking how she was doing and telling her I missed her. She responded pretty quickly, saying she missed me too, and that she'd been asking her mom, Sophie, why she hadn't seen me in so long. That broke my heart. I didn't want the kids to think I'd just up and disappeared from their lives, but at the same time, I couldn't let myself get dragged back into being their go-to babysitter again. So I told Natalie that I loved her and her cousins, and I was always here for them, but things with the family were kind of complicated right now. She didn't really get it, but she said she understood, which I appreciated. Kids are way more understanding than people give them credit for. After that, I made it a point to stay in touch with the kids directly, without going through Leah or Sophie. I'd text them or send them little gifts every now and then, just to let them know I was still thinking of them. It wasn't the same as spending time with them, but it was the best I could do under the circumstances. A few months went by like that. I was still kind of figuring out who I was without my family constantly needing something from me. I started hanging out more with some coworkers, going to the gym again, doing things for myself. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my own life. But of course, nothing stays calm for long in my family. One day I get a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't pick it up, but something told me I should. Turns out it was Leah, using a different phone to call me since I'd blocked her. Real mature, right? She starts off with, "I don't know what your problem is, but you need to stop ignoring me." No, hello, no, how are you? Just straight to the attitude. I told her I wasn't ignoring her, I was setting boundaries, and if she didn't like that, too bad. Leah wasn't having it. She started going off saying how the kids were suffering because of me, how they missed me, and how I was ruining the family. She even had the nerve to say, "You're being selfish. You need to get over yourself and start acting like part of this family again." That was it. I'd had enough. I told her, "You know what, Leah? Maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe the problem is that you all took me for granted for years, and now that I'm finally standing up for myself, you don't like it." She tried to argue, but I wasn't having it. I hung up the phone and blocked that number too. After that, I knew there was no going back. I wasn't just taking a break from my family, I was done. Done with the manipulation, the guilt tripping, the constant demands. If they couldn't respect me or my boundaries, then they didn't deserve to be in my life. And you know what? I didn't feel guilty anymore. After blocking Leah for good, I honestly felt like a weight had been lifted. It was the first time in forever that I wasn't waking up stressed about when the next call or guilt trip would happen. I could just breathe. My days were my own, and it felt like I could actually focus on my life for once. But of course, it didn't stay quiet for long. About a month after that last blow-up, I got a letter in the mail. I don't get much mail besides bills, so I was surprised to see something handwritten with my name on it. When I opened it, I saw that it was from Sophie. She had written this long, dramatic letter about how disappointed she was in me and how I was tearing the family apart. It was full of the usual guilt trip garbage about how much the kids missed me and how I was letting them down. She even had the audacity to say, "I hope one day you realize how selfish you're being and that it's not too late to fix this." Like, seriously? I was selfish? I gave up years of my life for them and now I'm the selfish one because I don't want to be their doormat anymore? I crumpled the letter and tossed it in the trash. I didn't even have the energy to get mad about it. At that point, I was just done with all their manipulation. If they wanted to paint me as the villain, fine. Let them. I wasn't going to waste another second of my life trying to prove myself to people who clearly didn't care about me unless they needed something. Around the same time, I got an email from Natalie, my niece. It was sweet, and she kept it casual, just telling me about her school and some stuff going on with her friends. I was glad to hear from her. I always told the kids they could reach out to me anytime, and Natalie was the only one who actually did. But something in the email caught my eye. She mentioned that her mom, Sophie, had told her I was too busy to see them anymore. Too busy. That was the lie they were telling the kids? I couldn't believe it. Instead of being honest and saying that there was some family drama, they were making it sound like I just didn't want to see the kids anymore. Like I was off living my best life and I didn't have time for them. It pissed me off, but I knew I couldn't take that anger out on Natalie. It wasn't her fault. So I responded to her email, saying I missed her and that I was always here if she needed me. I didn't bring up her mom's lie. I didn't want to drag Natalie into the mess. But it made me realize that this situation wasn't going to get better. My siblings were going to keep twisting things to make me look like the bad guy, and the kids were stuck in the middle of it. After a few weeks of stewing over it, I decided to make a final, clean break. I had to, for my own mental health. I couldn't keep playing this game with them, where I was constantly on edge, wondering what lie they'd tell next, or when they'd try to guilt me into coming back. So I changed my number again, blocked any emails from my siblings, and pretty much cut all ties. It hurt like hell, especially thinking about the kids, but I knew it was the right thing to do. The funny thing is, once I made that decision, I felt this huge sense of relief. It was like I could finally see clearly. For so long, I'd been caught up in trying to keep everyone else happy, always sacrificing my own happiness and well-being for the sake of family. But family shouldn't make you feel like that. Family should support you, lift you up, not tear you down or use you when it's convenient. It wasn't easy, though. There were nights where I'd lie awake thinking about all the times we spent together. Holidays, birthdays, the laughs, the inside jokes. It's not like I didn't love my family. I did. But love isn't enough if the people you love don't respect you. That's the part I had to come to terms with. Then, out of nowhere, about 3 months after I cut them off completely, I got a message on Facebook from my mom. I don't talk about her much because she's never really been involved in the day-to-day drama with my siblings. She lives a few states away, and we've always had a kind of distant relationship. But she must have heard about what was going on because her message said, "We need to talk about what's been happening with your siblings. They're worried about you." I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. Of course, they were worried now that they couldn't reach me to dump their problems on. I debated whether to even respond, but I figured it was worth at least explaining my side of things to my mom since she wasn't directly involved. I told her everything. How I'd always been there for my siblings, how they completely abandoned me when I needed help, and how I had to set boundaries to protect myself. I didn't sugarcoat it. I wanted her to know exactly why I had made the decisions I did. She took a few days to respond, but when she did, it was surprisingly supportive. She said she understood why I felt hurt and that she wished things had gone differently. But then she dropped the line that kind of threw me. Maybe it's time to forgive and move forward. Life's too short to hold grudges. That's when I realized something. This whole time, I'd been holding on to this idea that my family would eventually come around, that they'd see what they did wrong and apologize, and we'd all move forward. But that wasn't going to happen. They didn't think they did anything wrong, and they probably never would. So, I made peace with it. I wasn't going to forgive them because they hadn't asked for forgiveness or shown any remorse. But I was going to move on. I wasn't going to let their toxic behavior control my life anymore. And that's where I am now. It's been a few months since I cut them off for good. And while it's still hard sometimes, I know I made the right choice. I've started reconnecting with old friends, focusing on my career, and doing things that make me happy for once. I don't know what the future holds for my family, or if we'll ever truly make amends. But for now, I'm at peace with where things are. And that's all I can really ask for.